And you said before that it's important to be kind of careful with language around this. What do you make of Candace Owens' language around this? Because she's very, very polarizing and has said some quite kind of provocative things around race.
Yeah, I think she is very unserious in the sense that, I've seen her say things without any evidence of her feeling a burden to back it up with a fact. Like Richard Spencer is a Democratic plant. When challenged on Joe Rogan about why she thinks climate change isn't real, she doesn't even have a single study to back it up. She's not a smart climate skeptic, or it's just her gut feeling against the view that she thinks is wrong. And when asked to back it up, often has nothing. The Southern strategy never happened. That if you're going to argue that, you better know something that mainstream historians don't. But she seems to feel no burden to back those opinions up with evidence, which is my first problem. My second problem is that she seems to have very little respect for civil discourse and free speech. She tweeted that Hillary, Mueller, and Bezos should all be locked up. She tweeted that, right? Okay. Is that someone who's serious about civil discourse, or someone who likes seeing their enemies thrown in jail? Or someone who's performing? I actually can't tell. I'm willing to believe that most people are nice people. But many nice people are also constitutionally incapable of really charitable civil discourse. Kind of bullies, and they enjoy bullying. And Candace gives me that sense, in addition to being someone who is comfortable making factually inaccurate claims and just kind of letting them sit there.
Because there's also this sort of sense that in the current kind of expansion of the culture war, someone like her, a black conservative, is of a huge value to one side in that culture war. Like there's this sort of sense of huge forces pulling people towards more extreme positions.
I'm sure that the incentives of social media, anything based on an ad model, is you're getting paid by the click. So all the incentives are aligned to cater to your outrage, to show you things that you either hate or love, which is going to show you ever more shallow versions of the opinions you disagree with, and ever more moralizing and extreme versions of the opinions you do agree with. Whether that explains Candace Owens's beliefs is something I can't know and don't particularly care about. Again, I don't really care how she came to her belief that Richard Spencer was a Democratic plant. I don't care how she came to the belief that women who don't have children have something biochemically wrong with them, as she put it. The former is a conspiracy theory, and the latter is just a bullying thing to say. It's just mean, and it's not interesting. So, my critique of her has nothing to do with who she's funded by, because, again, you could be funded by someone and still happen to be right. You could be funded by the Koch brothers and have correct opinions, just like you can be funded by George Soros and have correct opinions or incorrect opinions. So, my problem with her is the way she thinks. Ironically, Kanye famously tweeted, "I love the way Candace Owens thinks," but it's precisely the way she thinks that's the problem, which is to say there are many things that I agree with her on. Her general critique of the left on race issues is often spot on, but it's the way she thinks that's the problem, because it's often not evidence-based at all, which leads her to say these things that are patently false. And, it actually amazes me sometimes. I forget how big a platform she has, because just when I see a clip of her and how shallow it is, I assume that she doesn't have that big of a following. But then every once in a while, I'm reminded of her Twitter followership, and I'm surprised every time.
You're increasingly in a really influential position and speaking on some of the kind of the hottest topics. How do you make sure that you are keeping your own mind open and being exposed to kind of critiques and being kind of having the kind of intellectual curiosity and intellectual honesty to challenge your own views and perspectives? Do you think that's a really important thing for you to do? And if so,
yeah.
Well,
I think one thing I'm very afraid of is if I ever became, I guess there's this thing when somehow as the number of Twitter followers you have goes up, people's willingness to challenge you on your beliefs in private sometimes goes down, which doesn't make sense and is really concerning. So I can imagine someone who has 1 million Twitter followers, who is a legend, and who surrounds themselves by people who praise them constantly, and they lose their edge to the point where when they're confronted by someone who really knows the topic and challenges them, they're left completely, their cards are shown, and they realize, holy crap, I've just been surrounded by people who are smelling my farts and not challenging me at all. I think that's happened to a lot of people.
How do you avoid smelling your farts?
Well, I'm not big enough to have a posse of people who agree with me. And that also sounds like horrible. That sounds like a nightmare. I would much rather have people, which I do, who disagree with me all the time. So I seek out those interactions. I have friends who think I'm wrong about like big parts of the way I assess race issues, and I talk to those friends. So I get that pushback. I read opinions I disagree with frequently. I tried to steel man my opponents. All of these things. Try to stay mentally flexible and mentally healthy. Understand that you can change your opinion on something and it's not the end of the world. You can admit to being wrong and it's not the end of the world. So, yeah, I'm not super concerned about it, but I do think about it.